Hi guys, thank you all for tuning in and welcome back to Sewing Clara. I have for you today a fun and easy sewing project that will help you to practice straight stitch, zigzag stitch, and you will make a simple edge on these bags that we're gonna create together. So I have here this laundry bag with a cord and a cord stopper, and then I have here this small bag that is a baggie that I like using for soap knots. If you're not familiar with soap knots, here's what they look like. They come from soap knot trees. They contain saponins, which makes them a wonderful alternative to regular laundry detergent, which is great, especially if you have rather a sensitive skin. They can be also used in order to make a shampoo. I personally love using them for washing our laundry. Anything that's not white, I wash with these. So you will need a handful of soap knots for a batch of laundry. I usually use something between 7 to 10 soap knots. Then I simply put them into these soap knot baggies, tie the baggie properly together so that the soap knots couldn't escape in the washing machine, and the baggie goes directly in with the laundry. And one portion of soap knots can be used 3 to 5 times, which will not only save you money, but it's also way more sustainable. So definitely a great alternative. If you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend giving it a chance, because again, it's gonna save you a lot of money and the laundry is wonderfully soft afterwards. But enough about the soap knots. We are going to start with the laundry bag first. That's a bag that I use, for example, for my hand traps that I use for boxing or for stockings or for socks. Basically for anything that should not mingle with the rest of the laundry, or small things that could get caught somewhere in the washing machine. The bag is a simple rectangle, and the edge has a hole on one side through which I have pulled a cord. I tied the cord at the end, and there's also a cord stopper, which always keeps the bag secured whenever I put it into our laundry. I have here a rectangle that I cut out of this mesh fabric. I think this is a great material for laundry bags. If you don't have a mesh fabric like that, any thin cotton fabric will do too. Now I'm gonna blend in the measurements for the rectangle that I have here. So it's 76 centimeters long, that is about 30 inches. It's 37 centimeters wide, that would be 14.5 inches. Then I have here a cord, which is 38 inches long, that's 96.5 centimeters. And I have here a cord stopper that I bought in our local sewing supply store. The first step is to grab the rectangle and to fold it on the longer side. So the fold will be now on the bottom, and here I have these two loose ends. So first I will align these two ends. I will put a pin at an angle to this edge on each side. Next, I'm gonna turn this piece for the time being so that you can actually see something, because it doesn't fit into the viewfinder all the time. And I will start pinning this edge. But I have to keep in mind that I will need a hole on one side for our cord. So what I will do is I will grab my measuring tape and I will measure 1 inch from the top, and I will make a little cut here. You don't have to make a little cut here, you can simply put a pin in here. And then I will measure 1/2 inch and I'll make a second cut. That will be enough for our hole. And later I will fold the edge over like so. And this thing will remain open on one side, so I will be able to pull the cord through, but more about that later. So I will put in the pins so that you see what other way you could mark the hole that should remain open. I sometimes like simply putting pins on each edge and then making a cross with 2 additional pins so that I won't forget that that's a spot I don't want to sew through. And I will keep pinning the edge all the way towards the bottom. And I will be sewing from here, from a certain distance from this edge, only towards this pin. This is where the opening will start. Then I will stop, I will leave this open, and then I will be sewing towards the bottom. On the other side, we don't need an opening, so I will turn this over like so. And all I have to do is to simply pin this edge together. And since there's not going to be any holes or any markings, I can simply sew this together with a straight stitch. Let's turn on the sewing machine. Here we have the standard settings. So it's straight stitch. The needle is completely on the left side. The length of the stitch is 2.5. That's what I actually also want, so I'm going to keep it like that. The sewing machine suggests that I would use the zigzag sewing foot. It's already in. And the only 2 things I'm going to activate is the sew up and the thread cutting function, which is something not every single sewing machine has, so you might have to do this manually. So these are the settings. And now we will grab our piece and we will start sewing this edge together. That's the edge that can be sewn together without any openings. I will place it inside of the machine so that the needle will go through a little bit further from this edge, so that the needle will go a little bit like here. That's ideal. And I will align the edge of the sewing foot with this edge, which will allow me to keep exactly the same distance along the entire line. So I lower the sewing foot first. My machine allows me to lower the needle with this button, otherwise you'll have to do it manually. So I will remove this pin since now the fabric is secure, and I will start sewing. Here's what it looks like. I don't think you can see much because it's dark, but when I open the seam, you can clearly see that it's been sewn together. And now I will also do the zigzag edging. It's not necessary because this is not a fabric that frays, but that way we can practice it. First, I will set my sewing machine to a zigzag, and I want the zigzag to be as wide as possible because the fabric is a little stretchy and I don't want the edge to get stretched out. So it's gonna be 7 points wide and I'll make it 2 points long. That will be okay. It doesn't have to be super dense because again, it's a fabric that doesn't fray. It's more to hold it better together. And just like before, when I place the fabric in, I will make sure that the needle goes a little bit further from the back edge. And I will place it so that the little window inside of the sewing foot is aligned with this. And I'll start sewing. The machine will do the sew up first, and now we can go. You will notice that I hold the fabric a little bit at an angle because I find that when I'm using zigzag, it's always better to do it because it has kind of a tendency to move a little bit further to the left. And I want to make sure that the zigzag will go all the way through to this edge. And here's what the edge looks like. I find that it got still a little stretched, so I could have probably used a little bit longer settings for the stitch length, would have been better. But it will do. It's just a laundry baggie. It's not some fashionable piece, but if I were using this for some fashion pieces, that's something I would have to keep in mind. That's why it's always good to try out your stitches first on a spare piece of the fabric that you want to be using for your projects. I changed the settings again, so we have again straight stitch, And now we'll start working on this side where we will have the opening. So I will sew only this much together, and then I cut the thread. And then I will start sewing here. All right, so let's put the fabric in first. I will make sure that the edge of the sewing foot is aligned with the outer edge, and the needle will go in a little bit further from the back edge. So let's do the sew up and a few stitches. And I'll do the sew up now again. I will remove these pins, and I will also now remove these two crossed pins so that they are not in the way, because now it's very clear where the opening is. And I will start sewing in the same distance from the edge here below this cut. So when I put the piece in, I will make sure that the cut is exactly in the little window, because that's where I want to start sewing. So let's do it. Here is what it looks like. So here we have a hole. I can still pull my pinky through it. And I will start edging from this cut towards the bottom with zigzag. So I'll make the same settings when it comes to the width. So it's gonna be 7 points, but this time I'll make 2.5, and let's see if the edge is gonna look any better. The zigzag stretched the edge still a little bit out, but a bit less than before, so I would probably have to go with length 3. Again, that's why you should practice first on spare pieces of the material you're working with, because then you can determine all these extra things. Before we turn our piece to the right side, we need to fold the edge. And here on the side where the opening is, I want to fold the seam allowance of the opening to each side. And now I'm gonna fold this over so that the fold on the top will start where also the opening starts. So I'm gonna turn it over and put a pin in, and I'm gonna use a bodkin in order to show you where the opening is. So the beginning of the opening is where the fold begins. I hope this makes sense. So I will turn the piece again to the wrong side, and now I'll keep folding the edge, and I will keep putting in pins from the right side. So actually it's better if I hold it like this, and I will make sure that I fold it everywhere the same amount. And the easiest way how to make it is grabbing the side where I started and measuring the amount I folded here on the opposite side with the original amount, and I can adjust it, and that way I will make sure that it's gonna be symmetrical. So I will keep folding and measuring just to be sure that everything is gonna be neat, and I will keep putting in pin at an angle. Here is what it looks like. So when I open this, inside is the right side. So we have here the pins, because I'm gonna leave the piece turned to the wrong side. This is how I'll go to the sewing machine. I will turn it to the side like so, and I will align the sewing foot, the right edge of the sewing foot, with this edge, and I will make sure that I'll be sewing around with a straight stitch in a certain distance. An important thing is that I will see how far the opening goes. Ideally, you would put in a pin, and as you go to your sewing machine and as you align the sewing foot and decide on the distance and how you align it, this is the ideal distance, because that will allow you to still have this opening completely open. If you would sew, let's say here, then you would make the opening smaller and it might be difficult to pull the cord through. So that's why it's important. So I like putting in a pin, And let's go to the sewing machine and make the straight stitch around the complete top edge. The sewing machine settings are following: straight stitch, needle completely on the left, the length of the stitch is 3 points, and the machine will do the sew up and cut the thread for me. Now I will place the fabric in, and I will align the right edge of the sewing foot with the right edge of the fabric, and I'll lower the needle. And I have here this mark with my pin in order to know how far from the edge I'm supposed to sew, and that looks actually good. The needle is apparently in the correct position, so I can remove this needle and I can start sewing. Here is our piece, so the edge has been sewn in place. Now I'm gonna turn the piece to the right side. But first, let's take care of these little loose threads. Here is our opening. I will grab the cord that I wanna pull through, and I will pull it through the eye of a bodkin. And I will pull the cord through. I will adjust the ends so that they are pretty much equally long. And now I have to shove them through the opening of the cord stopper. So I have to push this end in, and that's where the opening appears. And here I like using the bodkin again, or simply small scissors. And I like pushing both ends through like so. Sometimes it's easier to pull one end through first, and then do the second. This is artificial fiber, so I'm gonna grab a lighter and I'll burn the ends carefully. And now I will tie these ends and make a secure knot. And that is it. I can also shape the edges a little bit on the bottom. For that, it's always best to take some kind of a relatively pointy but not sharp tool. And then our laundry bag is finished. Now let's start working on the drawstring baggies that I will use for our soap knots. I wanted to show you two different ways of how to hem the edge, so that's why I have here material for 2 bags. And I also decided to turn this at an angle so that it looks a little bit different with the pattern, and it will be made of 2 separate pieces, while this one is simply one larger rectangle that's been folded in the middle. So let's go over the measurements first. So let's start with the smaller baggie. So that's 11 times 29 centimeters. That's in inches, about 4.5 times 11.5 inches. And I have here 2 pieces of cord. They are 40.5 centimeters long, and that's about 16 inches. And the way I like measuring the length of the cord is I simply take a cord and fold it in the middle and see if that would work, if that would be long enough in order to have 2 ends on which I can pull. It could be probably even a little bit shorter, but I always like keeping in mind that I want to tie the end. So if it looks anything like that, and you have different measurements of your baggie, that will work. This rectangle is 13.5 centimeters wide and 17 centimeters long. That is in inches about 5.5 inches, the shorter side, and 6.5 inches, the longer side. And now I will demonstrate again how to measure the cord. So I simply grab the cord that comes from this spool, which is actually, by the way, the center of toilet paper, and I used it in order to wind the cord on it. A very useful thing. So I will fold it in the middle and I will see if that will be long enough, and I'll cut it. And now I have the measurement for my cord, so you don't necessarily always have to measure. This is a really good length. It will give me enough space on each side in order to tie the cord, so that will work. We will start with the smaller bag. It's going to be a little bit different type of edging on the top, which is suitable for any baggies that are rather small. So even if you would make a gift bag for some jewelry, that would be a great way of how to do it. So first, I made here a mark. That's how far I want to fold the edge in, right? So we have here this amount, and then I knew that once I will fold it in, I will need a hole on each side through which I will pull the drawstring. So I made these two marks here, and I made a cut below each of these marks. And these marks are also aligned with my seam that I will have here. So this interrupted line symbols the seam that I want to have. And I will only sew together both edges from the cut towards the bottom. So I will start putting in pins. Here is what the piece looks like so far. So we will sew from below the cut all the way down on each side, and I will use simply a straight stitch, and I will also edge these sides with a zigzag stitch. I will also edge each of these loose ends on the top with a zigzag stitch. So let's do this together. My sewing machine is set up to straight stitch needle completely on the left side. I still have the zigzag sewing foot, and the length of the straight stitch is 2.5. And the way I will position the fabric inside is going to be that the needle will start sewing here where the little cut is, right? So let's put the piece in, and I will make sure that the edge of the sewing foot is also aligned with the edge of the fabric. I'll lower the needle. The machine will do the sew up for me, and we can start sewing towards the bottom. I'll do the same on the other side. Here is what our piece looks like. So here we have the seam made with straight stitch on each side. And now I will set the machine up to zigzag. I will make the width 7 and the length 2. And I will edge this edge towards the bottom. I will also edge this edge. And then I will open these two ends, and I will edge each edge with the zigzag. Actually, we can even start with this one. So I will go a little bit further from the back edge, and we'll start sewing. Here's what our piece looks like. So we have here the zigzag around the edges, here on the sides, and here on the top. Before we go on and do anything else, I will grab my scissors and I will chop off all these little loose threads. I just want to get rid of them. The next step is to fold these seam allowances inside on each side of the bag, and then we have to fold the edge inwards. If that's a little difficult for you, you can always grab a pin and first fold this inside and put the pin in like so. You want to make sure that once you folded this over, that the edge is then aligned with the seam here. So I'm gonna do it on the other side. I'm also gonna put in a pin here quite on the top. And now I want to fold this over. So I will have to remove the pins, but it helped me to establish how far I need to fold it. So I'll remove the pins. And when I fold it over, you see here's this little cut, and the fabric goes a little bit, the folded edge goes a little bit below the cut. That's where I want to have it. I'll put in a pin like so here and here. And also somewhere in the middle. And I'll do the same on the other side. Now you want to sew from where these two part. You just want to make a straight stitch. So basically where the sides open, that's where you want to sew. But if you would sew around like this in your sewing machine, that's very small. So that's why what I like doing is actually grabbing the pins, taking them out again, and putting them in like so from the inside, which is in this case the right side of the fabric, because this is still turned to the wrong side. See? And now when I go to my sewing machine, it's easier to fold certain parts away so that I'll be able to sew without, you know, anything standing in my way. So the way I put the pins in now, I can go to my sewing machine, I will fold this edge over. I can even, if I want to, I can even grab a pin and pin it away, because that way it will simply not get in the way. And I will make sure that I will start sewing right here all the way to the other end. And that's why it's important that there is a little bit more fabric that goes over this point, because I will sew through exactly here. And if I would sew here a little bit further to the left, then chances are I would be sewing away from this, and there would be no point of doing this because this would be open. So it's always good to put in pins, turning it over and making sure there's enough distance from the edge and the pins, so that even if I would move a little bit more to the left, that there would be a nice seam that would secure this fabric. So we'll do this together. The settings of my sewing machine are following simply again straight stitch, needle completely on the left, and I'll make the stitch 3 points long, so half a point longer. And as I said, I will open this and I will sew basically where the needle is. So I will place the fabric in so that I'll be pretty close to the outer edge. I will lower the sewing foot and I will lower the needle and see if that's a good position, because if it would be too far on the left, I could still put it on the top and I could still move the needle with the settings a little bit further to the right if necessary. But this looks good, so I can start sewing. I will pull this needle out because now the needle of the sewing machine is holding the fabric, so it's secure, and I will allow the machine to do the sew up. And I will sew all the way to the other side, remove the pins as I'm sewing so that the machine can't hit them. And here we'll do the sew up again, and this side will be done. Here's what it looks like. Now I will remove the pin that held the other side away, and I'll do the opposite. So I fold the finished edge here and I pin it in place. And I actually just realized that the pins are on the wrong side. This is not what I want, so I have to put them to the right side. Trust me, this will happen occasionally. Sometimes we just do things and don't think it really through. And now I'm gonna place the fabric in. Again, align the outer edge, lower the needle, make sure it's the correct position, remove the pin, let the machine do the sew up. Let's see, let's do the sew up again and we're done. Now I can remove the pin. I will again grab my scissors and make sure I'll chop all the loose ends off the thread. And now I can turn my piece to the right side. Then I can again go through and see if there are some little threads sticking out, because that just makes the piece look so much better if you take care of all these little details. And now, when it's turned to the right side, I will grab a marker and I will form the edges. And here you have it. So this is what the baggie looks like. So we have here these openings on the sides for the cord. So I'll grab the 2 pieces of cord for this. This tool is called a bodkin. If you want to know more about stitching needles and about the different types, you can check out the course Basics and Hand Stitching, the video that discusses the different types of stitching needles, including bodkins, is the video number 3 in the course. So I'm gonna grab one of the cords and I will pull the cord through the eye of the bodkin. I will simply pull it through here all the way to the other side. Now on the other side, the fabric is folded in. I will pull my scissors through like so, and I will make sure that the bodkin moves on the side where the scissors are, and that will help me to avoid getting caught in the fabric. Now, one side is done, and now we have to go through the other side all the way back, and I'll see if I come through. Nope, I got caught again, so I'll put in the scissors. The scissors will safely hold the fabric to one side, and I can move along the scissors out through the fabric. That's a really simple but very effective hack. And here I will adjust the cord and I will make a knot. And we'll do the same here from the other side. So again, I pulled the cord through the eye of the bodkin. I will go through here. Now it's a little bit easier to go through because there's already a cord that's holding the fold to one side. And we move back. And I got caught again, so it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna help myself with the scissors. Again, move the bodkin a little bit backwards, hold the fabric to one side, and I will adjust the cord, make a knot, and ta-da! Our baggie is finished. So now I can safely pull the cords and close the baggie or open it as I please. I always still suggest tying the baggie, not too tight because then it's not so easy to open it again, especially when it's wet. And I also like making a bow, and that's how my baggie goes into the washing machine. So you can make a bag like that of a fancier material. So if you would use, for example, velvet, that would be also a wonderful gift bag if you were giving someone jewelry. Now let's work on the a little bit bigger baggie. Here we can do the edge on the top a little bit differently because it's a little bit wider. So I already marked here the fold. So when I folded it, instead of measuring, I simply folded the piece in the middle like so. I made sure that the fold was the same on each side, and I made a little cut here on the end of each side of the fold. And then I simply made here a little cut about 1/2 inch below. That's for the opening. And again, I folded the fabric like so, aligned it and made a cut on the other side. And this way I marked the opening. That's a very easy way. You don't always have to put in pins to know where what goes. And now what I will do is I will put in a few pins and I will then show you which sections we will have to sew together and how. This time I put the pins on the same side because I will be sewing around, because there's also a bottom edge that needs to be sewn together. So I will start, I'm gonna turn it like this. I will start sewing here towards the cut. So let's say this is the distance. Then I will stop. This will remain open. And then I will start sewing here all the way towards here, and then there will be a seam on the bottom, and then I will move all the way up to the cut again for our opening. I will stop sewing and then I will sew here. And I will use the zigzag stitch only from below the cut around this edge, and this edge, only towards this cut. So let's do this. Alright, so the pieces are sewn together. We have our holes on each side. I have to admit the seam on this side is not perfectly straight, but in my defense it's a little bit difficult to sew with a camera standing between my legs. So anyway, I will start edging from below the cut on each side with a zigzag. Here's what it looks like, and now I will grab the piece, open it on the top, and fold it like so that the seams are now in the center, and I will open this and I will put 2 pins on each side. You'll see in a second why, because I want to start edging this top edge with a zigzag, and it's important that this seam allowance will be folded to each side here on the top. Here is what the top edge looks like. So we have this folded to the side, so it's really easy to see the opening. And now I'm gonna fold this edge over. So the fold starts on the top of the opening here, like so. So I can fold this seam to one side. I will turn this over so that I can see actually the inside, which is actually the right side of the fabric. I will put in a pin next to the hole, and I will do the same on the other side. So I'll make sure where the hole starts, that's where we have our fold. And I will turn the piece over, make sure I can see the hole, and I will put in a pin. And now I will align the entire edge. I will make sure that everything is straight. And I'll put in probably 2 pins on each side from the inside, because this is also how we will be sewing through the edge now. The back is now on the wrong side, but the way I put in the pins, they are from the right side, but I will keep it turned to the wrong side. This will make it easier to sew. And now I want to make a straight stitch. The needle is completely on the left side. We have the straight stitch settings. This time I'll make the stitch a bit longer, so the length is 3 points instead of 2.5, which is standard on my sewing machine. And since the needle is completely on the left side, when I turn the piece like so and align the other right edge of the sewing foot with this edge, the needle will start sewing exactly here where our opening ends. So that's how I will place the piece in the sewing machine. So I will lower the sewing foot and immediately also lower the needle to make the piece secure. And I will be always making just a few stitches. So this is the sew up first. And I will sew only towards this space here. And now I have to move the fabric towards me so that I could be sewing straight again and keeping track of the edge. Now I reached again a point where I have to move it. And that's of course a little bit difficult with the smaller back. So that's why if you do the hemming, like the edge this way, it's always better to have a little bit bigger size. And now I'll do the sew up. Here is what it looks like. Just like with any other piece, I will go through the wrong side and make sure that I would cut back all loose ends of the sewing yarn, because it just makes the piece look so much more professional if there are no little chunks of yarn sticking out. And now I can turn the piece to the right side. As always, I'll help myself with some kind of a tool in order to shape the edges. I'm doing it with simply a liner. Works great. It's not too sharp. It can damage the edges. And now I can grab the cord and my bodkin, and I can pull the cords through these openings. So I will start from one side. And now from the other side. Alright, so here we have our both drawstring baggies. I'm gonna use both for soap knots, but of course you can use them for whatever you want. And if you would use some fancy material, it would make a really great gift bags, especially for small pieces, like for example, jewelry or watches or something like that. And the type of edge that you will make will depend on the size of the bag and also on what you personally prefer, because you can make the regular edge that I made on the bigger bag also on the smaller one. It is possible. It can be a little annoying, but it's possible, and vice versa. I recommend trying both variations, and then you will see what works for you personally the best. Just to give you another option, I also made a third bag, so the size is somewhere in between, and instead of making drawstrings, I used a cord with a cord stopper, just like on the laundry bag, so that would be another option. And that is it for our today's project. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and happy sewing!